Hey Rebels, today's show is going to be a little bit different. I'm not cracking open a cold one with a guest. Today, I want to talk to you about the Crispy Boys meme. Yeah, I said it, Crispy Boys. I'm not going to spend too much time defining what a meme is. I think it's safe to assume that if you're savvy enough to listen to podcasts, you already know what a meme is. But I do think it's fair to assume you're wondering, what the f*** is a Crispy Boy? Well, for the sake of clarity, Crispy Boys are generally defined as easy drinking lagers, the kind you stash in a crisper drawer that have a light, crisp character to them. It doesn't just stop there, though. Crispy Boys is a part of meme culture, ripped straight from the fever dream cesspools of jokey puns and infinite self-referential gags that iterate endlessly until they end up consuming themselves like an Ouroboros. Personally, I didn't start seeing Crispy Boy memes and jokes coming across my feed until the summer of 2018, but ever since then, it's been a slow, steady drip of Crispy Boys content. So, why does that even matter? Well, Rebellion is a dues-paying member of the Craft Brewers Association in the United States. Membership comes with a bevy of industry data, including consumer trends, what's hot, and tips for running your brewery well. One of the key takeaways in an August meeting, consumers were suddenly talking about crisp as a signature feature of beer they wanted to purchase. Crisp was overtaking other terms like hoppy, smooth, creamy, fruity, sour, and bitter. That made me sit up in my chair and take notice. Suddenly I found myself asking, why is crisp becoming a thing? Was it a counterculture response to the domination of hop bombs and IPAs? Were craft beer consumers flipping the table on the long-standing trend of preferring big, bold, hoppy beers to bland, light, flavorless lagers? Or is something else going on? Within this episode, I'm going to take a look at how meme culture is influencing craft beer and how it's contributing to shifting styles and tastes in what I think are unexpected and unpredictable ways. If you log on to the beer app known as Untapped and you look up the term Crispy Boy, there are more than 50 beer entries, which means brewers from across the world, primarily North America, have picked up on this Crispy Boy trend and brewed beers as a result of these same jokes and memes. But it doesn't just stop there. It's not just an insider joke amongst brewers. If you look online, there are also serious journalism articles talking about the top 10 Crispy Boys of 2018, and they're making food pairing recommendations for beers that fit that Crispy Boy template. If you aren't a participant in these self-referential craft beer meme communities, it's kind of easy to miss this stuff. It exists in a bit of a self-aware bubble. But if you log on to Instagram, Imgur, Reddit, or Twitter, you'll find an intersection of sarcastic jokes, craft beer, and meme culture. They all mash together. One of these most popular meme machine platforms is a site called Middle Class Fancy. The entire Middle Class Fancy platform is dedicated to lampooning boring middle-aged white dudes who enjoy chilies, wear khakis, and enjoy grilling burgers while drinking a Crispy Boy. Okay, so I've thrown a lot of words and terms at you in the last 60 seconds, so why don't I pause for a moment and take you back to the beginning and give you a sense of the timeline of events so you can kind of wrap your head around what's going on with Crispy Boys. In May 2016, the Middle Class Fancy accounts were created on social media. They slowly began to pick up speed and gain a following. If you look at the numbers, it's not huge, but they do seem to be enough to sustain the effort of creating social media content. creating more jokes and more memes. Then you get to early January of 2017, and a video was posted on YouTube with the title, "Cracking a Cold One Open with the Boys." It's simple in execution, silly and stupid all at the same time. It's probably why it went viral. It's just a guy cracking open a can, and then the frame splits open, and there's 2 cans, making the same sound, and then 4 cans, and it repeats itself exponentially until your computer speakers are exploding with the sounds of cans being cracked. It's obnoxious and unwatchable, which I'm guessing is part of the humor, part of what made it funny. This video alone has millions of views. A month later, in February 2017, Lee Ayers publicly tweets that he's the creator of Middle Class Fancy and a few other social media channels making memes. He also posts links to a web store he runs where he sells memeified merchandise. Clothing like t-shirts and mugs, pens, stuff with memes on it that he can sell. It's also important to note at this time that the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC in the United States, was looking at sites like Instagram and cracking down on ads, specifically ads that didn't appear to be ads, that looked like genuine content. The FTC felt consumers deserved to know they were viewing sponsored, paid advertising content. This fact will come up later in 2019 in the timeline, but I'll get back to that in a bit. We're back in 2017, this time in May. Cracking a Cold One with the Boys, that same video, was covered in New York Magazine. And by June 2017, Google Trends Monitor showed a massive traffic spike for the term cracking a cold one with the boys. It had become a solid, legitimate meme. It was so unavoidable that it started leaking into other memes. In the same month, that May 2017, there were memes comparing Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Those memes were a joke, an ongoing series of jokes, implying that Bernie Sanders is always cool and Hillary Clinton is forever a square. When Bernie is cracking a cold one with the boys, Hillary Clinton is merely drinking a glass of water. They just iterate on and on like that. But it included cracking a cold one with the boys. Later in that same month, in June 2017, it was a busy month for memes. The term Crispy Boys appears in Google Trends Monitor for the first time. Hillary and Bernie memes begin to include Crispy Boys references. So let me back it up a bit. Google Trends Monitor is a service Google provides for web analytics. Companies, or really anyone, can hop onto Google Trends and look up search terms. These tools track the rate of search terms being used on a specific timeline, so you can see the popularity of terms as they come into cultural and social relevance. Reporters, and yours truly, have shamelessly used this tool to mine Google's database and connect the dots between seemingly disparate social events. We also use this tool to track and name stupid things. And one of the most famous in recent memory was when North Korea used the term dotard to describe President Donald Trump. Do you remember that story? It seemed when that happened, suddenly Merriam-Webster Dictionary is tweeting out the definition of dotard and explaining that yes, dotard is a real word, and no, it did not mean the same thing as retard, and yes, North Korea had used it in the correct context, but they were probably operating with an outdated dictionary from the 1950s because no speaker colloquially uses the word dotard, at least not in the last 50 years. The English-speaking world had forgotten what that word meant. So when you, for example, go to Google Trends and you look up the term dotard, you can find a convenient timeline of when Kim Jong-un's speech was announced. The media coverage took off and the English-speaking world collectively scratched their heads and said, "What the hell is that word? I'm going to look it up on Google." You see that spike in the timeline. Okay, We're in June 2017, and the term Crispy Boys is now on the official record for Google. And social media sites like Twitter, Reddit, and Imgur, and Instagram, they're percolating and sustaining that meme, that Crispy Boys meme. And the breweries across North America are now launching Crispy Boys named beers in response to those jokes and self-referential memes. May 2018, The Atlantic magazine, they published an article by an author known as Taylor Lorenz with the title, Memes Are Becoming Harder to Monetize. Lorenz explores the nature of memes and e-commerce within the article. The 24/7 churn of jokes and references online is relentless and fast-paced, and it's not getting slower. Where once memes like Numa Numa, Scumbag Steve, or Velociraptor could sustain themselves for more than a year, today's jokes have a much shorter shelf life. They only live for a few days, maybe months if they're lucky. Think about it for a moment. If you're in the business of selling cheeky t-shirts and clothing for a quick buck, how long does it take you to get t-shirts silk-screened, mugs printed, and all the other assorted tchotchkes made up before the joke becomes stale, unfunny, and beaten into the ground? And then you're left with a warehouse of unsellable, branded, out-of-date meme junk. Lorenz looks at this in the article, and she explains the difficulty of combining that level of speed and ephemeralness with the fact websites like Redbubble and Zazzle let you upload your own personal images and get a shirt shipped to you personalized with your own memes within days, not weeks, makes it almost impossible for these companies to keep up. These meme branding companies, they just can't go fast enough anymore. Taylor Lorenz is a journalist who focuses on web culture, and she does a great job of decoding emerging trends. She does serious, meaningful analysis, and I highly recommend you check out her stuff in The Atlantic, especially if you find this Crispy Boys analysis kind of interesting. I'm going to include links into the show notes so you can find more about her stuff. So, back to the timeline. We're still not finished. In 2019, memes have less hang time than the memes of 2009 or even 2015. That means fewer people will see them, and the references will become narrow and less meaningful. Fewer people will get the joke, and that is a disincentive for some people to purchase something in the first place. But then something funny happens in the article. Taylor Lorenz mentions the same guy that I've been hearing about, Lee Ayres. That's the guy who runs Middle Class Fancy. She gets him to admit he's switched his focus from the rapid turnaround of meme merch to nurturing a niche brand of products about Crispy Boys and grilling season and jokes about chilies. Now, instead of chasing a nuclear blast of viral content to get millions in likes and views all at the same time, he's working on death by 1,000 cuts, harvesting 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 likes and reactions at a time. He's no longer trying to go viral by millions, but by tens of thousands. It's magnitude much smaller. There's another problem going on. By 2018, platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter have been cracking down on retail businesses. Before 2014, if you were a business and you fired out a post on social media, specifically on Facebook, 100% of your followers would see it in their timeline all the time. Businesses got savvy to this and started to carpet bomb us with posts. Of course, everybody kind of remembers around that time they were just sick of seeing ads. They just kept saying the same thing over and over to Facebook. I just want to see content from my friends. I just want to see something original and no more ads. They were tuning off the platform. Facebook knew it had a problem, so it had to do something. They created a bottleneck to improve user experience. In 2015, if you were in business, suddenly you would see 50% of your audience was seeing a post, not 100%. Businesses started screaming. Many people, many small businesses who relied on Facebook saw their sales crater as users stopped being diverted to their pages to make a purchase. But Facebook didn't care. Businesses weren't the point of Facebook. They were part of the ecosystem, but user experience, user satisfaction was more important than the desires of these small businesses. It's hard to remember, but most of these small businesses who relied on Facebook, they were still essentially using the platform for free. Facebook hadn't figured out how to monetize ads yet. Business posts started to drop. It went from 50% to 30% audience share. It kept going down until today in 2019, as of the recording for this podcast, approximately 10% of any given audience for a business page will see a post at any time. Unless that post gets a lot of likes, clicks, reactions, or comments, you're not going to see it. It's just going to get squished. Any content creator worth their salt will tell you it's impossible to get content to go viral every single day. So put this in the context of a small business who wants to talk to its audience on Facebook and Instagram. What are the consequences of having your audience crater, of having memes diminish in terms of time? You have two solutions. You're going to have to pay, and you're going to have to make better content. So, let's bring it back to a guy like Ayers and Middle Class Fancy. What does this all mean for Crispy Boys, right? Put yourself in his shoes. If you're a meme merch maker, you're fighting against three basic things. The time constraints before a meme becomes stale-dated. You're looking at platforms like Facebook cracking down on your business and throttling every single post, so not a lot of people are seeing it. You're also fighting against becoming just static noise. Consumers are getting bombarded with paid content from other businesses, with free content from other businesses. Ayer figured out two solutions. The first for him was to create a slow feed of content, making the same self-referential jokes over and over again. Crispy Boys, New Balance shoes, grilling season, it became a theme for Middle Class Fancy. Over and over again, he reinforced those messages to a very specific audience on his platform. It didn't matter if he didn't go viral every single day, but it mattered that he'd go viral once in a while. Then when users would mainline into that, they'd start seeing that repetition. They'd start jumping into those pieces and slowly absorbing into what kind of felt less advertising, less salesy, and more just organic. That's the trick. His other solution, Ayer's other solution, was to get sponsorship. If he wants to fund what he's doing and he's not selling as much merch, how is his business going to survive? In late 2019, I noticed Middle Class Fancy posts started including disclaimers like paid for by Chili's, paid for by Budweiser. Today, if you go to Middle Class Fancy's web store, you'll find a wide variety of meme merchandise, and a lot of it has to do with Budweiser colors and fonts. And you'd think most big companies would be litigious about copyright and trademark infringement, but not Budweiser, because it's sponsored this content. It's sponsored this merch. These multi-million-dollar companies he was making fun of saw more value in being in on the joke rather than just being the butt of the joke. So I ask myself, why? Let's bring this back to my original question. What is the impact of meme culture on craft beer culture? Well, it's not just the 50 beers named Crispy Boy or the presence of things like Alberta's craft beer memes on Instagram. There's an ongoing series of influences from meme culture, and we're just scratching the surface. I guess the next question is it just one guy trying to make a buck on Instagram the primary reason Crispy Boys became a trend and crispy as a term for craft beer became a trend in 2019? Is the emergence of Crispy Boys the result of a well-engineered social media campaign by big macro beer companies, or is it a grassroots internet joke that took on a life of its own and went beyond the original design of its creators? What if it's a little bit both? And what does that mean for craft beer? Lastly, does the Crispy Boys meme represent a meaningful shift in consumer preferences from hoppy beers to lighter beer options? All the numbers I can find seem to suggest that people who love IPAs and big, bold, hoppy beers still love them. They're not slowing down. They're still buying more of that beer. If anything, the crispy boys of big beer are still in retreat. They reported a drop in sales again in 2017, 2018, just as they had in 2016, 2017. In comparison to craft beer, who has been basically running the table and eating the big guy's lunch. If you have numbers, if you have an explanation or a theory to explain Crispy Boys and what its impact might be, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to comment on our social media channels or shoot me an email at matthew.barton@rebellionbrewing.ca and tell me what you think. Give me your own conspiracy theory. I'd love to hear it. As always, thank you for listening to this episode. I'm proud to let you know that Rebellion Brewing Podcast is an affiliate member of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. If you're into podcasts and you're looking for great content produced right here in our own province, the Sask Podcast Network at saskpodcastnetwork.com is a great one-stop shop to discover local stories to listen to. If you want to find the latest news about Rebellion Brewing, be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Untappd. As always, thank you for joining the Rebellion.